or weather or travel plans. So let's dive into some buyer consultations, and let's before we dive into what I have for you, I want to hear from you. What are you what do you think about, or what does your current process look like for buyers? So you have a new buyer or someone that's a potential buyer. What's your process in 30 seconds?
When we come to the office and prepare for about an hour to an hour and a half
Okay.
to go over important guidelines so we can develop a strategy that will best suit their needs.
Okay. So you're an hour and a half meeting in the office before you ever take them out. Anybody else do anything different? There's no wrong answer here, right? We're all learning to be better.
Send a questionnaire.
So you send a questionnaire to them. Okay.
Ask one question.
Okay.
How many years they have, what's very important to them, how long they've been looking.
Okay.
Pretty well.
Like that.
One thing you just said that I'd caution you on, don't ask how many kids they have. That's a violation of fair housing.
Yeah.
You can ask how many people will be living in the home with them. You cannot ask how many kids they have.
You can ask how many pets they have.
You can't ask about pets. Pets are not a protected class.
Yeah, for now.
For now. Did you say they should be? Yeah, don't ask. You can't ask anything about family status. So kids, pregnant, married, but you can't ask how many people will be living in the house with them.
Hello.
If that's a question you asked, tweet
Hey.
that. The last thing you want is a fair
Hello.
housing.
Hey.
Married.
Hello. Hey.
Hey, please mute yourself.
You cannot ask about being if they're married either.
So for the purpose of the loan.
Nope. You can ask if
There's anybody.
is there anybody else buying the home with you? Yeah, you can't ask are they married, right? Because do they have to be married to be on the same loan? No. Right? I mean, and in today's world, are less and less people getting married. Yeah, there's a lot more people that are now partners that aren't married. Right. And they're choosing different terms. They're choosing to go against the grain of tradition that has been created around marriage. Right. So it is a violation of fair housing to ask those specific questions. But yeah.
Bring it up, you can go into more details as to ages and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you have to, yes. And you still have to tread lightly.
Correct.
Right. So well, can you tell me more about that? Right. It has to be very open-ended. We can't get too specific. Fair housing violations tend to not be as heavy on the real estate sales side of the world as they are on the property management side of the world. As a property manager, I was a property manager for 6 years. We were shopped every 3 to 4 months at minimum. And some of those shoppers weren't hired shoppers. They were people that were coming out intentionally trying to stump you on fair housing, and they made a living by suing people for fair housing violations. It's perfectly legal for them to do that. They can do it with you on the residential sales side too. It's not as common. People aren't doing it the way they do it in the property management world yet. Be cautious, be aware. You could have someone that's attempting to shop you and get you to violate fair housing. And in the litigious world we live in, be even more cautious around those specific things.
I did see comments in a listing just the other day. Backyard, great for the kids to play. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I saw one of those too in a different state. Yeah. 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 Be mindful of those things, right? Can I put it's within walking distance to Harris Teeter? No. What if they don't walk? Right? If they have a handicap, that's a protected class.
Yeah.
It's a short distance to, quick commute to, convenient to. It's not walking distance to.
Couple of those in that
Yeah.
particular description.
Yeah, because if they can't walk, that's a violation of fair housing. Yep. Oh.
Something desirable, highly desirable. They flag that
Really?
desirable.
Interesting. That could, maybe they must have been considering that steering of some sort. Yeah, it's just be mindful. Anybody else do anything different? So we've got setting expectations. We've got a questionnaire that goes out.
Have a pretty, I didn't used to, but
I've talked with Joe a little bit, once this kind of started, I've shifted to have a consultation out where I'll show a house.
Yeah.
Pre-approval. Had a lead come in this week that wasn't pre-approved, I was not gonna go show them homes, they didn't want to, they said they didn't wanna hurt their credit, well, we aren't gonna check, you're gonna hurt your credit, so.
Yeah.
But I shifted to consultation, and I've lost a lot of potential leads, love it,
Yeah.
but
But you save yourself a lot of time.
Yeah,
probably,
Right.
I saved a lot of time and money.
and we get those calls on AOD that they want to go see that house right now.
Sure.
Of course, our process has to change. I used to, if I put that call, I would show them one.
Hmm.
Not before pre-qual.
Yeah.
Had to be pre-qual.
Yeah. I think the other thing to be mindful of, how many agents they're out there, they're on vacation, and they tell their client, well, just call the listing agent or just call wherever and find someone to show you the house. I'll write the offer if you want to buy it. Right? That's why we do the pre-qual. That's why we have an agency agreement signed, right? Protect yourself, protect your time. Your time is worth money. Right? And that hour, 2, 3 hours, however long it took you to go show that house, how many buyers could you have found that are qualified? Right? Things to think about. Anybody else do anything different? Anybody not do, and it's completely okay. Anybody not do anything at all? They just they sign an agency agreement, they send it to them, they maybe talk about it over the phone, they sign it on the hood of their truck, and they just go show a house.
Sometimes I have.
Yep.
And, and that's part of the reason why I'm here.
Yep.
I want to do something different. I want to have that different. I'd like to win them over first.
Sure. Yeah. Well, buyer agency now is more important than ever, right? Did a lot of things just change in our world? Yes. The thing is, the agreement has been the agreement for a long time. Buyer agency should have been executed before showing a house for a long time. It's just now to the point where legally we're going to have to do it because they're going to legally check us. This came up a couple weeks ago. How many of you have seen the showing time request where you have to check the box that you have a signed agency agreement?
I haven't seen that.
So when you go into showing time now, as these changes go into effect, you have to check a box that says you have a signed agency agreement for the person you're showing the house to.
Prior to even schedule.
So here's a quick, it might not have gone into full effect, but it's coming. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have to check a box. They are going to be spot checking it to make sure we have agency agreements on those people. Here was the question was, what if I don't have the agency agreement signed yet and I'm going to have it signed before I show the house? Can I still schedule the showing?
Yeah.
Yes. You check the box, you have an agency agreement signed because it will be signed prior to the showing. If they don't sign it, you cancel the showing and there's no problem. Right? So someone was like, well, I can't schedule the showing because I don't have an agency agreement signed. You can check the box that it's signed. If you don't get it signed, you have to cancel the showing. And that has been run through MLS and they are okay with that process.
Now, to clarify, that's an MLS rule. It's not necessarily the license law.
Correct. Correct. That's an MLS double checking to make sure. Yeah. Yes. You have to have a signed agency agreement before showing.
What, the license law?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't show without compensation being discussed and an agreement signed. Yeah.
Should we put in showing time?
No,
No.
it's tied to the MLS.
The not have to send an email. You can't do that.
Nope. Nothing compensation can be tied to MLS related, which includes showing time. Yeah. You can put it on a keychain, you can mow it into the backyard, you can put it on the sign rider, you can put it on your car, you can wear t-shirts, you can put it on your voicemail. Yep. It just can't be in any of the pictures in the MLS. Yeah. Like if it's on the fridge, you can't have a picture of the fridge with it on the fridge in the MLS. Right? But you can put it up after photos are taken. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So for those questions, we could go down rabbit holes about that. I'm not a broker in charge, nor am I an active licensed broker in the state of North Carolina. However, that's as much as I'll answer on those things. There's videos that have been recorded. Karen and Jason did a call that's been in the weekly email. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that. And if you have questions, ask Jason. Also, there's slides from the team meeting this week that'll be in this week's weekly email. So keep those things in mind. You all have, various people have mentioned some of the things that you do. This is something that I created. For those of you in Zoom, I might disappear from my voice for a minute. All right, for those of you in Zoom world, we will drop the PDF of the buyer intake form. Oh, there's a flash flood warning on my phone. Get ready, everybody. Your phone's about to go off. Till 4 o'clock. There's a buyer intake form, and Rivers will drop it in the Zoom too as a PDF for you all that are in the Zoom world. This is a form that I created. I took a buyer agent class. So a little background on me and why I'm teaching this class. I was a buyer's agent on a team. I was their lead buyer's agent and hired and trained other buyer's agents. I took a class from Jen Davis and Sarah, I can't remember her last name. Both fabulous buyer's agents. Jen Davis in her last year as a solo buyer's agent sold over 140 homes by herself. She strictly worked with buyers. That was no listings. She had some showing agents to help her show. However, she wrote every buyer agency agreement. She negotiated every contract. She wrote every contract. She did all the repair addendums. She had help on the showing side. She did it because she properly qualified clients. She had a strategy session with every one of them, and she got the buyer agency agreement signed. So this is the first part of the process that I used. Take it or leave it, adjust it to what you want. This is a buyer intake form. The intention of this is before you ever meet with them. This is not the strategy session. This is, do I even want to schedule a strategy session with them? Here's some questions that you might ask. Now, I was working with a lot of leads at the time, so I was getting inbound Zillow leads. Right. So I'm picking up the phone. I had these with me all the time, and this is what I took them through. Now, I've tweaked this a little bit this morning. The very first question that I want to point out to you, what's normally the first question we've asked someone? Are you working with someone? I need you to take that question and erase it from your mind. Right. How many people lie about that? A lot of them, particularly if their agent told them, I'm on vacation, call another agent. I'm not working with anybody. Or maybe they haven't signed anything yet, but they've already committed to someone verbally, right? They're going to tell you they haven't signed something. The question is, have you seen any houses yet? Are they going to tell you yes or no? Yeah, they're going to tell you if they've seen houses. Then you ask, which houses have they seen? Get addresses. And then the next question is, well, who showed you those houses? They're going to say, I saw them at an open house, or such and such opened the door. Someone had to let them in. Whose responsibility is it to make sure they don't have a buyer agency agreement already signed with someone else? Ours. Right. So if they've already seen houses, you need to call those agents they saw a house with to confirm they don't have a buyer agency agreement signed before you go show them a house.
Well, if they've not seen the house, you should know that they have an agent now.
In theory, Joe Don, you're right. However, how many agents are still going to be out there showing houses without agency agreements? That, they're eventually going to get caught, but think about it. Like, we have training on it, right? There are other big brokerages that aren't training on it. And there's a lot of small brokerages that these brokering charges are not going to any training, and they're functioning business as usual. And they're not changing anything, and they're going to do what they've always done. And they're going to get themselves what they don't want, which is ended up out of the business. Right. So I would challenge you to change that line of questioning, right? Not, are you working with another agent? Have you seen any houses? If so, which ones? Because they're not gonna lie to you about that part. Right? They're gonna be excited because they're gonna tell you the houses they've seen. Right? And they're gonna know what they are. And they're gonna be able to tell you whether it was an open house or not. And then follow up on that. These are some other questions I asked, and we already talked about some of these this morning. Is there anybody else buying the home with you? Right? That's again, in order to be compliant with fair housing. I can't ask, do you have a spouse? Do you have, right? Who will be living in your home, right? Remember, we can't ask, do you have any kids? Right? Fair housing violation on that one. Asking why they're moving, are they renting or do they own, right? We're going to find out for this consultation. Do we need to be ready for a listing as well? How many of you have ever done a listing appointment before you went to the listing?
What'd you just say?
How many of you have ever done a listing appointment before you went to the listing?
Pre-listing.
All right. So you don't have to go to the house to do a listing appointment. Should you?
Well, you need to know the property.
Do you? At some point, yes. But can you have a listing appointment without ever seeing the house? Absolutely. Right? You can actually get paperwork signed without ever seeing the house. Right? We see the house to confirm that our evaluation of what is right, price, and prep the house for market. Right? You can have a whole listing appointment without ever seeing the house. I know a lot of listing agents that everybody comes to the office and they meet with them at their office before they ever go see the home. Is that also something that helps you be a safer person? Right? You're protecting yourself, particularly if you're going out on a listing appointment where you don't know someone. Right? You've never seen this house. You don't know these people. They're not in your sphere of influence, and you're just going to go show up to someone's house. Think about it. Right? You could be putting yourself in a situation. I'm not talking about listings today yet. It's something to think about. How are they going to pay for the house? Right? Why are we asking that? We need to know if they're going to be pre-approved or not. Right? Do I want to sit down and meet with someone for a buyer consultation if they're not approvable?
Provable.
Yeah,
Game, play the long game.
sure, it can. And yet, do I want to know what situation I'm walking into? Yes. Do I want to be armed with all the information I can? Yes. Ideally, before I ever walk into the consultation, do I want to know if I'm going to send them to a lender or not, whether they already have a pre-approval? Yes. Ideally, do they come to the consultation in person with a pre-approval in hand? Ideally, right? In a perfect world, we've already made those connections. They show up to meet with me. I'm already showing my value to them before I ever see them face to face. Now, we talk about what price they're comfortable with. We're, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're judging how fast they need to move. Why is it important that we ask how fast they need to move? Time frame for what? Well, we're talking about buyers, so yes, but like, what'd you say, Jeff?
I said urgency.
Urgency.
So, what's your response?
Well, what I'm judging right here is not even all the things we just mentioned. It's how fast do I need to meet with them for a buyer consult? Right? If they're at 10, they got to move. I might need a buyer consult this afternoon. Right? We're coming into town this weekend. We're driving in tonight. Well, okay, I'm going to meet you tonight. Right? We've got to judge the level of urgency in the pre-qual before we ever get to the consultation. Because if they aren't in an urgent move, right, I could schedule it out a week from now. Now, is it important that I get them in front of me as fast as possible? Yes. Because our buyers typically, whether they're looky-loos or not, they're ready to go right now in their mind. It's our job to help reset that expectation. The very last question. I'd love to help you buy a home. In order to help you find a perfect home, all we need to do is set an appointment with all the decision makers. So I can help you get what you want and the time you want. What's a better time and date for you or for us to meet up? This time or this time? Why are we giving them times and not letting them dictate the time?
Say,
Because we're busy too.
Sure, some of them will say, I don't know what's good for you. What else?
Make sure you set one.
Mhm. Who controls our schedule? It makes us look busier, sure. Yet, how many of you have a time blocked calendar? Okay. How many of you have time blocked your calendar at some point in your career? And how many of you are terrible at following your time block? My hand is up there with you. Us offering the times allows us to honor the time block. Right? What's the number one complaint of agents about why they can't lead generate? I don't have time. I'm too busy. Right? When we block the time and we control the schedule, right? And we say, well, I'm available from this time or this time. Are we now protecting our calendar? Yeah. It's our job to protect the calendar. Our clients don't know that, and they're going to take advantage. Do you get to call the doctor and say, I need to see you right now? You can tell them that, but are they going to get you in right now? They're going to get you in their next available appointment. It might be that afternoon. It could be 3 days from now. It could be 6 months from now. Right? We just moved from a new state. Chase asked to get a doctor's appointment 3 months ago, and his appointment's not for another 2 months. I got sick last fall, needed to go to the doctor. A sick visit, 3 days to get in for a sick visit. No, right? But like what I'm saying is, right, like we have to teach people how to treat us. Right? When we drop and give them everything, we're teaching them that we're always going to be available for them no matter what. Do you all want to answer your phones at 9 o'clock at night with real estate questions?
Mike's always telling me, set boundaries, Carrie, set boundaries. Stop answering your phone at 9 PM.
I would challenge you as a real estate agent to not be the agent that says I'm available all the time whenever you need me. Right? We're going to talk about setting expectations. Right? We're going to talk about setting it. Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Sent that email, if you answered at 11:30, go out.
Right. Yeah. If you're the person that writes emails at 11:30 at night, use the schedule button. Right. How many of you knew there was a schedule button? Yeah. You can schedule your email to go out at a later time. Delay send. You all have no idea how many emails I send at night. Right. But if you're getting an email from me at 6 a.m., it was sent the night before. Right. And I pick random times so that you can't predict it. Right. So I'm not sending an email at 7 a.m. to schedule. I'll do it like 7:01 or 7:13 or 7:11 or 7, So that way, if I'm sending you emails on a regular basis, you can't be like, why do I get an email from him every morning at 7 o'clock? Right. I change the time every time I send something is scheduled. I've seen that happen too, right? How many of you gotten the agent that, texts you at 11 o'clock at night? Right?
I would just really think how efficient you are and just put you on that pedestal, just so you know.
Okay, you go right ahead. I'm not going to be sending you an email that late. I've been staring at the back of my eyelids for 2 hours by that point in time. Sure.
I am in my office until 7 o'clock. My phone goes on silent at 8 o'clock. If I happen to see it after that, or if we're under contract and we're in negotiations, I will answer it and I will text you back, but other than that, you'll hear from me in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was actively buying and selling, I told people, I said, my family time starts at 6. If you need me after that, I need you to give me all the details in the message you leave or send me. Know that I'll be checking my voicemail and my text messages, but it's up to me to decide whether it's an emergency or not. If not, I'll get back to you during normal business hours tomorrow. Right. And I describe in my expectations what is an emergency. Right. In real estate, what emergencies do we have? If we planned ahead, we should have none. Right. An emergency, typically fire, flood, or blood. Right? Like when I was in property management, that's how we trained our tenants, right? Fire, flood, or blood. That's the only reason you need to call me after hours. Right? Outside of that, it can wait till tomorrow. And so outside of that, there's a couple things that could get a client on edge. What are they? It's all due diligence. It's almost always due diligence. I was talking to someone yesterday, due diligence expired at 5 o'clock. The next day, they received their repair addendum from the buyer. Due diligence expired at 5 o'clock the night before. Is that a problem? Yeah. Your seller has some decisions to make, whether they want to be nice or not. Yeah. Right. Should that have been an emergency 2 days before? Right. It really should have been planned way before. Right. If you plan, right, then there should be no emergencies. We communicate expectations. We communicate ahead of time. How often so if I tell my client I'm going to follow up with them in 2 days, when should I call them? In a day. Faster than what I say. Right. Because when it gets to 2 days, guess what? They're going to call you and it's too late. Right. So if you're going to follow up with someone in a week, call them in 4 or 5 days. Right. Because it gets to a week and guess what? They're going to be calling you because they're on pins and needles because it's been a week. Right. When they say a week, they really need to be touched 4 to 5 days. Right. So think about that when you're setting even nurtures and follow-ups, right? We're going to talk about setting the next step and where we classify people in the pipeline. You know, are they a watch, nurture, or hot? And when we think about those things and we say, well, okay, well, then I'll follow up with you in a month, right? I need to be calling them in about 20 to 23 days, not in a month. Because in a month, they're already going to pick another agent. Right? We set a deadline and we beat the deadline every time. What we tell them isn't what we should put in our calendar. Anybody learn anything, hear anything, pre-qualifying, something they were going to implement, something they hadn't thought about?
I like, have you seen the elephant yet first, or you work with a realtor?
Mhm.
Because I always do that.
Yeah.
See what the spot do.
Yeah. Well, you get out there and they're like, oh yeah, I saw this house. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought you weren't working with anybody.
I like that this is just a real conversation starter for us.
Mhm.
You know, we'll learn a lot by just asking, you know, even if we don't ask all 11 of these,
Mhm.
we ask Cap, we're gonna know a lot about them.
Yep. Sure. Well, and this guide is not meant to be an exhaustive, right? It's not meant to be like you have to ask all 11 questions, right? Exactly what you said, Tammy, right? Right. They're going to answer some of them ahead of time. Some of them you might already know the answers to. They might have already sent you a pre-qual letter before you ever talk to them. And the goal is not to get through all the questions. The goal is to feel comfortable doing what? Setting an appointment to meet with them, right? The goal is to get to a point where you go, okay, I know they're not working with another agent. They seem like they're approvable. Or they are approved, right? Do we have to know exactly their timeline to meet with them? No. Does it help? Yes. We don't have to know all the answers, yet it is a tool that helps. So when we go from pre-qualifying, then we dump into a buyer guide. Now, this is a list of things we'll go through. What is, to you, when you hear buyer guide, what do you think of?
The steps they'll have to go.
The steps they have to go through. A blueprint, cost,
Cindy Dudley said process.
a process,
Expectations.
expectations. Yep. When you think about a buyer guide, when should the client or potential client receive a buyer guide? Okay. Anybody have a different opinion
Before you meet.
before you meet them?
Set free.
Mm-hmm. How many of you, so let's compare this to the listing side. How many of you do a pre-listing packet that goes to your client before you show up at their house? A couple of you, right? You should treat a buyer guide the same way, right? A buyer guide goes to them to prep them for the meeting. Is a buyer guide gonna do most of the heavy lifting for you? If they read it. Here's the other thing. How many people could be interviewing multiple agents? and they're just making phone calls today, right? You have an appointment set 4 days from now. And they're calling other agents, and you've set an appointment, and then they call agent number 4, and agent number 4 is ready to go show them a house tonight. What agent's gonna win? Agent number 4, are they the best qualified agent? Probably not. If they're willing to jump and go show them a house tonight, they're probably not the best qualified agent. But they like Pop-Tarts. Don't be a Pop-Tart agent. So I think this can be sent digitally, right? It depends on the time frame. I think you can do it digitally and you can do it really well. Some people do it in person. Most pre-listing packets I would have sent to the house, not digital. Because it's different. It sets you apart. Right? I have an agent in Colombia that I used to coach. She does a pizza box. She had a custom printed pizza box. Inside was a code to order a pizza on her with a pizza cutter, also with her pre-listing packet for the house. And you can have it Ubered to the front door. Uber drivers love to deliver things that aren't people. You order an Uber to meet you at your house. You hand them the box and say, can you deliver this to 123 Main Street, where you put into Uber, and they'll go deliver it for you. And you could do it yourself too, right? And what you're going to do is when you pre-qualify on the listing side, you're going to let them know like, hey, I'm going to have something dropped off at your house this afternoon or tomorrow morning, whatever it is. Just want you to be expecting it. Don't be surprised, right? So that you have something in hand before you meet. Now on the buyer side, do we always know their address? No, they might be coming in from out of town. The buyer guide is typically probably going to be more digitally sent than it will be physically sent. You can have a paper version of it for when they do meet with you. Yeah, if I send the buyer guide when I get off the phone with them and then they make 3 more phone calls and this one offers to go show them a house tonight, are they more likely to say no and wait till Friday to meet with me? I have a lot better chance. Right? Because I'm giving them something of value that's laying out exactly what I'm going to do. It's also going to set you up for success that they're going to ask these other agents going, well, how are you going to walk me through the process? So this other agent sent me a buyer guide. Do you have one? Right? They're going to start asking different questions. Could you put something in your buyer guide? This is not an exhaustive list. That is questions you should ask your agent before you hire them. You've already answered all the questions, whether on the phone or in the buyer guide. And then now they make those other phone calls to other buyers agents. And what are they hopefully going to ask them? Those same questions. And most of those agents aren't going to have the answers. Or they're going to fumble because they're not prepared for that question. Because our typical question is, whoa, have you been working with another agent? No? Great, let's go see a house. Right? Let's be honest. 80+% of agents out there, that's what they do. They're Pop-Tart agents. And the Pop-Tarts are going away, y'all. They're not as popular as they used to be. These are some of the buyer guide contents that I've seen success with. A welcome letter and meet the team. Now, many of you in the room would classify yourselves as solo agents, yet do all of you have a team? Yes, you do. Who's on your team? Transaction coordinator, a BIC, inspectors, photographer, all the other agents in the office, a measurer, right? Do we have people that are on our team? Yeah. This list looks very similar to a pre-listing packet. There are some differences, right? That letter is going to introduce them to everybody they're going to be working with. Now, some of you in the room might be thinking, well, I prefer to be known as a solo agent because there's a lot of people that don't want to work with a team because they don't want to be handed off. Can we still communicate that and show them we have a team of people supporting us? Yeah, absolutely. Yep. An agency disclosure. What is this known as here in North Carolina? Yep, the WWRA. Did I say that right? Something like that. Yeah, that's not what it was called in South Carolina. We had a South Carolina disclosure of brokerage relationships. And Indiana, we didn't have to do that. Every state's different, yo. Probably have to do it now. Agency disclosure, we talked about that one. Local market analysis with price ranges and trends. What's that look like? We serve multiple markets. Could be Alamance County. You know, if you primarily only work in Alamance County, it could be Alamance County. What if you're working multiple counties? Sure, you could tailor it to them, right? Can you have all this stuff pre-made, ready to go with minor updates every month? Mhm. If I were you working in this market, I would have one for every county that I'm willing to work. Or area, region, however you decide what those are. Right? Because how many of you work the triangle and triad? Right? Some of you are willing to go from one end to the other and everything in between. Right? So you need to have different stats, because if this person calls you and you're one that works multiple markets and they want to work Greensboro, but your buyer presentation shows Burlington, what's your problem? Right? Do I look like an agent, an economist of choice for the Greensboro market? No, Gary says be the economist of choice, right? Like be the one that knows the local market numbers. Where do you get those numbers? RPR. So RPR has a lot of those numbers. Your MLS also releases stats every month.
So I think RPR is from the whole.
Area. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can also get the.
Nice. Yeah. So you use the data set that you're comfortable interpreting, right? And you're comfortable working with at the end of the day. Neighborhood maps with zip codes and local attractions. Again, depends on how hyper local you are, right? It's going to be unique to you. Chamber of Commerce information, that's bigger in some markets than others. How big is Chamber of Commerce here? Depends on where you're at, right? What market you're working in. Again, how hyper local you are. Home buying process and timeline, we talked about this, right? That's the roadmap. How many of you have a roadmap for your buyers? Yep. Anybody seen the Monopoly board roadmap? There's one out there. You can find it in Facebook groups. It's a Monopoly board, right? You can brand it to you, whatever you want it to be. Yet it is some type of roadmap, right? I think RPR actually has one that's designed in RPR that you can modify as well. At least there used to be one. A buyer questionnaire. We've already asked some questions. What other questions could you put in a buyer questionnaire? What are you looking for? Wants and needs. Must-haves. Deal breakers, the must not haves. Now, someone's moving to the area, they don't know a whole lot, but they're ones that want to do research, but they really don't know where to start with their research. Could you put a question like, what school district do you want to be in? And you list all the school districts. You can. Right? I'm just saying, right? Like, because then now they have the school district name. They could go do the research. Right? I'm not going to give them school information. I'm going to give them the school districts. Right? They can now go figure that out. Because is that important to some people? Yeah. I could ask that in the strategy session too. Again, are most people going to read this and actually do all this homework? No. But it's giving them something that's a tool. You're going to go over all of it in the strategy session. This is for the ones that love homework. Right? Do we all know that person? Right? How many of you know the DISC profile? Right? Some of you. Right? When we think about the DISC personality profile, And if you haven't, you should go Google it, take the Tony Robbins disc assessment just to understand you and to read about the other styles and begin to learn how to identify people based upon the way they answer questions. So when we look at a disc profile, we've got a D personality. They're a dominant person. They're typically described as type A. They answer questions really quickly. They're short and to the point. They don't want all the details. Right? You give them the buyer guide, they're like, what's this for? Where's the paper to sign? Right? Like they're typically don't care about the details. You have an
Just show me where I need to sign.
exactly. You have the I personality. You would think that means introverted. It doesn't. It's life of the party. Right? They're the excitable person. They just want to talk your ear off. Right? They're the buyer that wants to just go see houses sometimes and not really buy. Right? They just want a friend. Right? That's the I personality. They're the life of the party. They're the extrovert. That's the Rivers of the world as right. Some of us are I's. I'm not. I act like one sometimes. It's adapted for me, not a natural style. Right? Like that's the person that they just want to talk. They want to have fun. Right? They don't really care about the details either, but they're going to be hard to pin down. Then you've got the S personality. They're the stable person. They don't like when things change suddenly. They like consistency, predictability, right? Do you see where a buyer guide might come into play for someone like that, right? You're teaching them what to expect. Make sure that whatever's in your expectations is what's actually going to happen. Because in S personality, what you don't want to do is tell them what's going to happen and then do it different. You have to prep an S personality ahead of time for possibilities of things that could happen. And just so you know, when we get to the due diligence period, this is what it could look like depending on, like, based upon this house we're writing an offer on. Right? We're pointing out things that could be potential issues. Right? We're prepping them for that. They're the one that an awkward situation happens and they retreat to the wall. Right? They're like, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to interact anymore. And then you have the C personality. They're very complex people, extremely cautious. They love details. The C personality salivates over a buyer guide. They want all the details. They're going to answer all the questions. It's all lined out, mapped out. They know exactly what's going to happen. That's me. I'm the person that wants to know everything. Give it to me ahead of time. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to ask all the questions. I'm the person that when I have a salesperson in front of me trying to sell me a product, I don't care about their sales guide. I care about their stats. Right? I'm going to go back to the property management world. Apartment guide, all the places they used to try to sell me on monthly subscriptions, just like Zillow tried to sell realtors and realtor.com and all the other places that try to sell us leads. They were trying to sell us leads marketing services. And I wanted all the stats. I wanted to know who they sold to in the market, what their conversion rates were, what the numbers were in their market. And they're like, well, we don't really have that data. And well, until you give me that data, I'm not signing a contract. Now, where do you think the majority of the people live on the DISC scale? INS. Right. You don't have a lot of the high D personality is rare, but they're out there. Right. You have a lot of detail oriented people, but you have a lot of people in the IS category. You can have overlap, right? I'm a CS.
You see where their financial situation kind of corresponds with what you're seeing in disc?
You're going to see some of that, but I don't know that there's a direct correlation. I'd have to do some psychological studies on that one and go do some questions and dig into that. That would be fun to do. My mind just went, ooh, I want to go see what that looks like. So like does the disc personality profile directly relate to their financial kind of situation? Right.
Ages ago, I took most interesting courses on the disc and he talked about the style of homes, handshake,
Yeah.
writing styles, and yeah.
So we'll look at bringing a disc class in. The whole purpose of even bringing up the disc is to know who you are and then be able to discover who your clients are. Because here's the deal. If I show up as a high D personality and you're a high I real estate agent, what are you likely to do as a high I? Talk too much. Right? Right? You're the person that's going to show up as an agent that's just like, and they would have signed the agreement 45 minutes ago. Right? So it's in.
Is that conflicting though? A type A versus a type?
Yeah, you gotta know what you're right.
Well, yeah, so I have to, as the salesperson, adjust, right? So now I have to adapt and I have to mirror and match. I have to come to their personality now and say, okay, I've got to mirror where you're at. And if you're going to bring high energy, then I'm going to bring high energy. And if you're going to be here in the middle, I'm going to be just a step above you. Because I can show up all bubbly and rah rah. That's not my natural style. Yet if I walk in that way and someone's over here kind of meek and mild and reserved, am I likely to scare them off? Right. So it's also how we show up with personality, right? A buyer rep agreement, you can go ahead and put one of these in your buyer guide. Again, those high C's are going to read it. The high D's aren't even going to look at it. And you got everywhere in between. Items required for a loan application, you can get them prepped for that. You could also list preferred lenders in there. I would encourage you to give at least 3, give them options. And then testimonials. Anything else you would include in your buyer guide, something you do include that's not on the list, or something you thought you might include when you build one?
You about yourself.
About you. Okay. Yep.
Your buyer,
Sure.
your analyst,
Yep.
show your
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, your bio, right? A page about like who you are. You talked about due diligence, Valerie? Yep. Yep. Yep.
You don't like on and out of pocket expenses, so they can.
Hmm.
They have to pay for upfront.
Yep.
I think terms too, so that they understand and that's a really important one, I think, to point out.
Mm-hmm.
So what is due diligence?
Sure.
What is earnest money? How does
Yep.
that work?
So
Those terms.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you'll have said. Be mindful of how big your buyer package is that goes to them before you see them in person. Right? We want to give them all the information they need to keep them enticed to come meet with us. And I don't want to give them too much that it scares them away from meeting with me. Right? So the digital version that you send out ahead of time might be missing 5 or 6 pages. And the printed version you give them in person has all of it. Right? And I want to let you know that we've met. I've added some things to this. I don't want to scare you off with all the overload of information. Right. And I wanted to make sure I could answer questions in front of you about any of it. So I've included a glossary and I've included additional expenses and I've included information about due diligence. Remember, this is like your resume. Do we want to give away everything on a resume? No. I want enough in the resume to entice them to actually call me. Right? Your buyer guide is your resume. No more than 12 to 16 pages at most. I would say probably closer to the 8 to 10, right? I mean, you got 10 items up here. If you included them all. 16 in person, right?
To like a post buyer guide and a.
Sure.
A pre and a post.
Yeah.
And the post is what they walk away with a little bit more information.
Yep.
Down.
Yep. I love that. One of the things to be mindful of here, some of you all have mentioned, I'm going to customize it to my buyer. Of this entire list, I would say maybe you change out neighborhood and local market analysis and you write a different welcome letter that's customized to the conversation you had with them. Why do I think only those things and no more? Efficiency of time.
Should be the same for every buyer.
Sure. I don't think it should be exactly the same for every buyer. I think there is some tweak. I think efficiency of time is right where we need to be. let's be honest, if we're gonna change too many things, what are we not gonna do? We're not gonna use it at all. Right? We're not gonna use it at all. Too many things on the list, we're not gonna use it. Too many things to change and adapt. I need it to be quick, plug and play. I need a templated welcome letter that I go in and tweak about a paragraph worth. I change their names. I have a few sentences that reiterate some of the things we talked about and that I learned about them. Depending on the markets I serve, I might change out local market maps to have one that's Greensboro and one that's Durham, right? I'm just throwing names of cities out. Yet other than that, everything else should be largely the same, because if it's not, I'm not going to use it. Because we talked about it earlier. What do we not have? Time. At least that's what we tell people. Right? There are buyer guide templates in Command. How many of you knew that? Don't say that, Valerie. I saw that. I can read lips. Are they the most amazing, perfectly custom, exactly what you want buyer guide? No. However, if you don't have something, is it a starting point? Yes. It's a brain rattler, right? It's a, ooh, I never thought about putting that in there. Or, oh, I like that language. Or let me tweak this. Right? So if you have nothing to start with, there's an amazing tool already built for you to start with. Right? Some of you are in the room going like, I don't have the money to go pay a designer to do it. Don't pay a designer to do it. Go start here. Or go to Etsy and buy one for $2.99 in a Canva template and dump it into Canva and edit it. There are agents out there that love design work or marketing people that have built Canva templates for real estate agents. You pay literally like $3. Download the template, upload it to Canva, edit it, and make it your own. So don't say I can't do it, right? There's simple tools out there that are very simple, plug and play, and financially feasible. Thoughts, questions on buyer guides? Things you would do differently, things you're going to add, take away. Ahas, moments of clarity. I would say that goes in the buyer consultation, a strategy session, which is what we're going to talk about. I don't know that I would put a how to get paid in the initial document I send before I meet with them. Yeah.
It's not Debbie B.
Yeah. Anything else? How many of y'all are going like, I just need to do this? I see some head shakes. Is this a tool that's going to be more and more important in the very near future? I think so. The future is now, right? We're there. Let's talk about the actual strategy session. I go. No. Hit too many buttons. Okay. We've already talked about these things. These are 3 things to be ready for, right? So this is you prepping before the session, right? You've already talked about this in your strategy guide. So you already have an idea here. One is the roadmap, right? What is the home buying process? Be ready to explain that, answer their questions, right? Most of you know this process. Know your local market stats. Should we know our market stats? Yes. Do I have to be able to recite them verbatim? No. However, I need to be able at the drop of a hat to intelligently talk about a market. Study your markets. And then be ready to talk about the team you work with. Do people want to work with people? Yeah. They want to know the real you. They don't want to know a robot, right? They want to know the real you, how you're going to show up, how your team's going to show up, what they're going to do with you along the way. All right. Now, we jump into our buyer consult. We've set the appointment. They've shown up. We're there. I would start with this question. What do you know about the market? Why are we asking them what do they know about the market? We're the experts, and Sam hit it. how much do we need to hold their hand or not? Right, we're going to validate or educate. We start there because if we just go into our normal spiel and they already know everything because they're a high C and already read the entire buyer guide, right? My hour and a half appointment just went to a 25-minute appointment because they already read everything. And validate their knowledge, ask if they have any questions, and we're going to move really quickly. If they're the high I or high S that needs more education along the way, right? They probably don't know much of anything. And the high D is going to say, I don't care about the market. I'm ready to buy a house. I'm buying a house now. Let's go. What do we have to do? Right? The conversation changes depending on how they answer that question. Now, once we know what they know about the market, we're going to talk about relevant market data. This is where you have to know what's going on. We need to know things like inventory. If they want to buy a $250,000 house right now, what's the inventory like? It's low. Do they have many options? So what type of expectations do I need to set with them?
Urgency.
Right? Right. Probably some type of urgency, right? If they need to move quick, the moment we see the right house, we need to get on it. We need to go show the house. That's why, right? We got to be ready to go into action. Now, if they're looking for a $700,000 house on the lake, what's the inventory like? It's low, yet what's the demand? The demand is lower. What are their selections like? What options do they have? Limited. In the current market, do we have a little more negotiating room? Yes. Right? Knowing those things, that's simple, right? The more detailed we get, the better. Yet knowing those simple things as we learn about what they want, right? Those market stats play in. And we need to have some relatable stories, right? What type of buyer have you worked with that won in a $250,000 price point? What type of buyer have you worked with in a $700,000 price point that got a lake house? Right? I'm throwing random numbers out there. And there's not very many lake houses in this market, I don't think, for 700,000. I think most of them are closer to $1 million or more. And just throwing out random numbers. So clearly, I don't know relevant market data to the Burlington market. Teaching this from a national perspective. So we're going to jump into what do they know about the market. We're going to know the market data and stories to validate and educate their stories. We're going to jump right into a needs analysis. This goes back to those questions we've already asked. Have we already asked questions on the prequal that are part of the needs analysis? Yep. How many people are going to be living in the house? Now, are we going to start getting more specific now? Yep. Your needs analysis. How many bedrooms do they have to have? Right? How many bathrooms do they have to have? Right? Do they prefer ranch or two-story? Do they prefer a large yard or no yard maintenance?
So I'm really curious because I know many buyers that I work with. Everything they say they want or don't want, they want the opposite. They find the opposite.
Sure. So
how do you deal with that?
We see things that they didn't know were available and how they want that, and everything changes when they realize that.
sure. So let's go back for a second. What is our goal in doing a buyer consultation? We're gathering information, we're narrowing down what they're looking for. The ultimate goal is to get a clarity and a commitment, right? I need an agency agreement signed. And I'm doing my best to save my time. So if I'm showing buyers, how many houses should I be showing a buyer? Single digits, 3. Any other numbers?
Like, do the whole time or just on a day or?
Total. As many as it takes.
That's on the time frame.
Depends on the time frame. If you execute a proper needs analysis, you get all the information, you dig in, and you make sure you understand what's truly a non-negotiable and what's not, no more than 3 days. If you're showing more than 8 houses, you as the agent missed something. You either didn't ask a question, the client didn't give you a certain piece of information because you didn't ask about it, or weren't listening right. So, Carrie, to your point, part of this is being so confident in the questions you're asking and being so in tune in the room and so free of distraction that you're third level listening. Anybody know what I mean when I say third level listening?
I'm kind of with them on this, though, 'cause I feel like I get that they write it down for me, and I make them do a needs, want.
Sure.
And then as we're showing properties, it completely changes, and I send it back to the drawing board, I'm like, you guys really need to reevaluate these if you want. I think it's because they found out that what they really thought they wanted.
Sure.
Isn't out there, or really isn't what they want.
Sure. Yeah, I think there are times for sure where we go show a client and the client starts to change their mind. Yeah, that should be a rarity. Right? It's probably 1 out of every 10 clients is a buyer client that's you're gonna go show them what they said they wanted, and then they're gonna decide they want the opposite. Yet if we're listening well and we're confirming, right, and we're asking the questions and we watch their body language as they're talking about things, and we listen to the tonality in which they say it. Do you realize that, and this is one of the things we talk about in bold, only 7% of communication is word choice? Right? So when they talk about wanting a pool in the backyard, if they just check the box that says they want a pool and we don't see anything that goes with it, we're only getting the word that they want a pool. Yet if they're sitting in front of me and we're talking about the pool and they're like, well, we really want a pool. And I say, well, what's important to you about a pool? Right? So I'm now qualifying their needs and wants. And I'm asking deeper questions about what's important to them about that. What are they going to start telling me? How important it is. What's their body language and tonality going to do? If they really want a pool, you're going to hear it in their voice. Are they going to sound excited? They're probably going to start smiling. They might perk up in their chair a little bit, right? Their whole body language and demeanor is going to change when it's something they really, really want and are excited about. And when they go, well, yeah, it'd be nice to have 4 bedrooms. Do they really need 4 bedrooms? Right? So I'm going to say, okay, well, when you said you really need 4 bedrooms, it sounds like maybe that's a negotiable. So tell me more about that. What's important to you about 4 bedrooms? Well, we really don't have to have 4. It would just be nice to have an extra room, right? See, we're asking qualifying questions now to dig into the needs and wants. It's not just how many bedrooms and how many bathrooms do you want? It's not, do you want a pool? Do you want a large yard or a small yard? It's why are those things important to you? And when we start to dig in and ask those questions, we learn more details. Now, don't get me wrong. I had one client I showed 38 houses to. 38 houses. I think they ended up buying house number, it was like 21 or 23. Right? 38 houses. They kept waffling. We're going to have those clients every now and then, right? Husband wanted one thing, wife wanted another thing. On the day that they were in alignment was a day there was nothing on the market they wanted, right? And then by the time we went to show houses again, this one wanted something on the lake, but this one wanted something with trees in the backyard, right? It was just constantly ever changing, and their budget didn't allow them to buy what they really wanted. So we ended up back at house number 21. That happens on occasion. That should be the very rare circumstance, right? We're digging in, we're asking questions. So in that needs analysis, right, we're looking for what are the things that won't be compromised, right? What are the absolute, right? We can check boxes all day long of what I want and need. But it's giving them scenarios too, saying, okay, well, I've got a picture in my head of what you want. Let me describe it for you. And leave something out. So would you be willing to buy that house? Right? If they've got a $300,000 budget and you find a $250,000 house that is everything but the pool, can they buy it and put a pool in? Possibly, right? I see you over there shaking, Jeff. Right, it depends on their financials, right? Right, but if they're approved for 300,000 and it's a $250,000 house, is it likely they can put a pool in? It's likely they could put a pool in. It's likely they could add the garage. It's likely they could finish the basement. It's likely they could, right? A pool is just the easy example. And yet it's our job to help them figure out what puzzle works. Because is the perfect home going to exist for every client? No. 99% of the time, they're giving up something on the list. It's our job to decipher through asking good questions, what are the things that can give? Does that make sense?
I tell the story and have a conversation that it is a process.
Mm-hmm.
And tell the story about the couple who wanted the charming house and, the last thing they wanted was a new house in one of these neighborhoods on an open lot. What did they buy? New house. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They figured they didn't have the time to do the work.
Yep.
Fixing up the charming one and then loved the light and the big bathroom so things can change in the process. They might learn their So I just give that as it, and so they also don't feel uncomfortable about saying, I think this is changing.
Sure.
It also goes into buyer consultation too, when you have enough time, they can tell you all their wants and needs. And then you can show them what's currently available at price point. If it doesn't match their price point, then you need to have that conversation before you even go look for it.
Yep. Right. And looking at this is where.
They may think all their wants and needs will fit. their
Sure.
budget.
Right.
It's like, not in this market anymore.
Right. So that goes.
They're coming in from out the area.
Right. So that goes right in line with where we're at, right? We have to know the market data and the relatable stories so that when we get into the needs analysis, we can bring them back to setting proper expectations, right? Well, what you want is a $500,000 house. And what's available is a $300,000 house. So if we give up this, and this, we can get you into this. Will that work for you? Right? Helping reset the expectations.
Well, it's a reality check overall.
Sure. Right. Yet reality checks, right, can be really rough on people. Right. Yet, are you saving yourself time? I'd much rather spend an hour and a half sitting there having a reality check with someone that decides they can't buy and then go back into a nurture pipe than spending hours upon hours trying to find the perfect thing that we know doesn't exist.
38 houses later.
Yes. That was a really unique one. It happened to be my insurance agent that happens to work for my father-in-law. It was great. I didn't have a choice with that one. Right.
Keep going.
And then we go back to 21. I was so mad. Anyway, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It was fun. They also were like, could afford way more than that. Yeah, anyway, I could tell stories about that one for days. Now, we complete the needs analysis. We have the reality check. We understand where they're at. Now it's time to identify where they're at in the lead funnel. Is every buyer a right now buyer? No. However, should every buyer sign a buyer agency with me today? Yeah. Tell me, in North Carolina, is there a time limit on how long a buyer agency agreement can be?
Just have to have a time.
You just have to have a time limit, right? So if they're 6 months out from looking, how long should the time limit be on my buyer agency agreement?
At least
12 to 18 months, right? I had a 4-year buyer agency agreement with a buyer.
And you wanted to work with them?
Well, they bought a piece of land with me and they wanted to build on it. I wanted the agency agreement to cover it so that when they went to build, they had to go through me to get to a builder, right? And I set it up that way that, hey, when you're ready to build, work through me and I'll connect you to the builders in the market and we'll go interview them together. Right. So I was ensuring I was going to get paid when they built their house. Then COVID happened and they never built. Identifying where they live or where they are in the lead funnel is important because efficiency of time. Right, a right now buyer, are they going to take a lot more time right now? Yeah. But do I have room for 6-month buyers? What's the difference in the drip campaign look like? The level of communication. I have a right now buyer. How often am I communicating with them? Every day, right? Multiple days a week. If I have a 6-month buyer, how often am I communicating with them and what am I giving them? So what does value look like? We can all say value. What is value?
Market condition.
Market conditions. Properties they might be interested in.
Rate updates,
What was it?
rate updates.
Rate updates. Now, if I was listening to my buyer and they're 6 months out, and part of their 6-month out reason is because they're saving money for a down payment because interest rates are high right now, or were high a week ago and they're lower today. Could their timeline change? Potentially, right? It's my job to make sure I know who in my pipeline is where and why. If they're waiting for 6 months to wait for a potential rate change that qualifies them for more, right? Could they move from a 6-month buyer to a 2 or 3-month buyer? Yeah. Right. Yet if I didn't do my needs analysis and I didn't understand the why and I didn't communicate with the lender and get them pre-qualified, do I know that information? No. They could end up going somewhere else.
Can
Yeah.
I add something to
Yeah.
what you just said? And just so people understand the importance of your pipeline, having a pipeline
Yeah.
and knowing their needs. The other day in sales meeting, I thanked Karen for taking care, Karen and Terry and Roger for taking care of our business while we were out of town. In our pipeline, and we didn't used to have a pipeline, but we have one now. We have people marked as to when they were going to get into the business. And our listings, when we came back, we had 6 listings ready to put on the market or,
Yep.
or getting ready. And one buyer.
Yeah.
And that pipeline, having that pipeline and knowing when someone was ready was key for our vacation. Because, and thank you to Karen for being on top of us saying, do your pipeline, figure out who you have.
Sure.
Because that's so important to know who is your pipeline and making sure you're following up when you need to. Because then your business is going to be there.
You know, we've had these conversations across the room. I've talked to many of you at different levels, and I ask often, what's your goal for the year? How many of you closed year to date? And what's your pipeline look like? And resoundingly, the majority of people say, well, I don't have a pipeline.
They may have a pipeline, it's just
Sure.
not. it's
So
for-
when we think about pipeline, we think about who do we know that's in the hopper that's going to buy or sell in the next 6 to 12 months or less. Maybe longer, right? Some people have pipelines that are built out further than that. Most people know what their 6 to 12-month pipeline is. What's that look like? Where are they at? Are they lined up? What questions am I asking? And when do I follow up? Right. And they're all going to have different triggers. Now, one of the methods right now, a lot of people are like, well, I don't have a pipeline because, you know, everybody that I'm talking to, they said the interest rates are just too high and they'll buy when interest rates go down. Should those people go in a pipeline? They're in your pipeline, whether they're physically in it or not, whether you're tracking it or not. One of the tools you can use, you take a giant piece of paper or poster board, build a spreadsheet, whatever works for you. And right now, what are interest rates roughly at? 6.5, right? Yet, how many of you know that you have a buyer that said, well, I'll buy when interest rates are back at 5, right? If you're having conversations with people, you'll find those. So when interest rates go to 5, if I didn't document it, I don't know who to call. And so what I would challenge you to do is go back, and whether it's on the wall in your office, it's on a spreadsheet that you look at on a regular basis as you look at rate updates, is go in and have a column for 6.5, 6.25, 6, 5.75, 5.5, 5.25, 5, right down to whatever interest rate it is. And then underneath each one of those, you put the names of the people that said, well, they'll buy when. And and if you'd done this months ago, right, you would have been at 6.5 would have been one of your rates. And you'd had people that said, well, I'll buy when they drop by 1%. Right. So rates hit 6.5 this week. Now, do I have a call list? Hey, rates just hit 6.5. You ready? They said they'd be ready when we hit 6.5. Right. We now have a reason to call them.
Or you can have a lender that says, have you talked to a lender that can explain what a 2-1 buy down is?
Exactly. Right. So rates hit 6.5 and their goal was 4.5. Right. Now we have a 2-1 buy down solution. Right. Well, we can get you 4.5 for the next year, 5.5 the year after that. And we trust that the market will adjust and you'll be able to refinance into a lower permanent rate for the rest of your loan. Is that a conversation? Right. Again, it's knowing your market stats, it's knowing your market, it's knowing your tools, knowing your team, and how can your team help you put buyers in houses?
Having conversations with the lender is a good thing. Their knowledge of how you can talk to your buyers.
Yep. Yeah. So this next point, why, we've already touched on this a little bit. Why is more important than criteria? Right. It's about their why. Why are they moving? Why do they want what they want? Right. Way more than just a list of things. Because as you've seen, people waffle on the list of things. Right. It's knowing the why behind it. The next question to ask yourself is, do you want to work with them? Does your motivation match their motivation? How many of you have ever chosen to not work with a buyer? A handful of you. Right?
It's already went on one journey and I farmed it out. I referred it out for a percentage and she cussed me out.
Motivation is important and match is important, right? There are certain types of people I wouldn't work with. Jordan.
Another scenario is the renter that has a lease that's up, let's say 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
So they say they can't buy in 6 months, and I say, well, that's not altogether true. You need to just have a conversation. Preparation is key. Have a conversation with your landlord, tell them what your intentions are, tell them what's the penalty for breaking a lease. Ask for that in closing cost and an offer. You're good.
I never thought about putting a lease break fee and closing costs. That's a nugget right there. Thank you, Jordan. That's a
And you don't have to commit to it unless the seller accepts it.
Right.
You haven't lost anything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because if you wait 6 months from now, you don't know what the market's gonna be.
Right. Yeah.
And now you're having to go to a month to month.
Six months ago,
Premium.
6 months ago, we didn't think the rate would be back to 6.5.
Well, yeah, but once you're at the end of your lease and you don't want to renew your lease, you're at a month to month, you're paying rent, month and a half. Each month. And you have to rent, so- Well, they don't have to know what it's for.
Right. The seller doesn't even have to know. It's just a concession. Yep. Yeah. Part of the reasoning behind doing a buyer consult is knowing whether you want to work with them or not. The last time you want to find crazy is after you sign the buyer agency agreement, you're showing them the first house.
Oh, and they show up 45 minutes later.
Oh, you get fired right then. Like, right,
15 minutes.
right. Like if they show up to a buyer consult late, right? But even if they're 15 minutes late, am I going to have a different conversation with them? In setting expectations with them, we're going to talk about timeliness and how we honor themselves, the agent and the seller that's having to vacate their home. Right? How many of you all have noticed a lot more listings now? People work remotely, they have to vacate and leave. Right? Or they have in-laws living with them that have to figure out how to get out of the house.
Find you, if you are outside your time frame too.
That's wild.
If you're-
MLS just wants to make money. Did I say that?
So what do you mean, Mike? Like you show up late? Are you?
So let's say your showing times from 2 to 2:30, And 2:35,
You pop the lockbox.
you got the law box or you're leaving the house, they can find you.
That's wild. Well,
I had a agent text me they were still there and that, and we didn't care. Oh,
I'm sure there's a level of,
And there's a button.
Yeah.
There is a button or whatever you wanna call it on your showing instructions that says if you've left the property, if it's occupied, please push that and let the seller know. you've
Right.
left.
right,
I always do that and I thought, Congress, oh, thank you. I didn't even know that was there.
right. You schedule an hour-long showing, you were there for 10 minutes, and this person's just like sitting in their truck down the road, you know?
Here's the ones that'll be there, there's the ones that have no overlapping, and there's one showing right behind you, and you're coming out 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
So they'll report.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
It's being mindful and aware, right?
Absolutely.
Other things to then wrapping up the conversation with your buyer, right? We've talked about criteria. We're figuring out where they fit in the funnel. We're working through their timeline, right? We already know some of these answers, right? You might or might not have asked these in the needs analysis, right? When do they want to be in their new home? What is important to them about that? What impact will this happen? Will this make on you or your family? What impact will there be if you do not meet the deadline? What if there's a plan B, right? So ask them, like, if this doesn't happen, what's your plan B? They're going to give you one of two answers. What's it going to be? I don't have a plan B, or they're going to give you plan B. If they give you plan B is probably plan A. If they don't have a plan B, that's what they're doing. If they have a plan B, they're already mentally setting themselves up for plan B, for plan A to not work. You need to be adjusting expectations with yourself and with them that plan B needs to move into the spotlight, and you need to have a conversation about it. At the end of the day, we want to show houses to buyers, not shoppers. How many of you have ever gone window shopping? You have no intention to buy anything. You just want to walk around and look at the shoes or the clothes. John's like, nope. It's one of my favorite things to waste time. I see some finger pointing going on.
My wife wants to, and I'm like,
So,
"No."
so we get through the buyer consult. What's the goal at the end of the buyer consult? It's really to get them to sign an agreement, right? And if they're not signing an agreement, we're setting an appointment to meet again. If we're choosing to move forward. Right? Is there an opportunity here to exit the relationship and refer them to someone else? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, the goal is that we sign the buyer agency agreement. My conversation would look like, I'm really excited to help you start on this search. My team and I are ready to go to work for you. The question is, are you ready? And they're going to give you one of two answers. It's going to be a yes. Then we go into agency agreement, right? So get this. We've gotten all the way to now. And what have we not talked about with them?
This
Compensation. You've just spent 45 minutes to an hour with them, setting the stage with your value to where now the yes should be, okay, great. Here's how this works. Let's talk through the agency agreement. This is how I'm compensated.
We're shopping, not window shopping.
Right. So now we're going to convert them to real shoppers that are pre-qualified, that are ready to go buy a house. Right. So that we can go show the homes. So they're going to give you a yes, or they're going to give you a what? I need to think about it. I need to talk to so-and-so. I need to have a conversation with my parents. I need to whatever. You know what, Valerie, I understand. And I would have some of those same questions too. So what it sounds like to me is there are some questions that have been left unanswered that you have that I haven't answered today. So what questions can I answer for you right now so that you feel confident saying yes today? And then they're going to say, well, I don't know. And they say, well, I don't know. And you say, well, if you did know, what would they be? It always works, y'all. It always works.
Got a seller right now that every conversation I have with him, he asks me, what questions should I be asking you before we get off the, or before we,
Mhm.
I mean. And the first time they asked me that, I was like, I don't know,
Right.
because it caught me off guard,
Mhm.
but what a question.
Yeah.
What question should I be asking?
Mhm. And typically my answer to that is, well, I've already covered everything we need to know. So I don't think there's any questions you're not asking. Right? Yet, if they're saying they don't know, right? Well, if you did know, what would it be? It works every time. It triggers the unconscious mind to make a decision and have an answer to your question. Right. Then at that point, we get them to a yes, we're signing an agreement. If it's a not yet, then we're setting the next appointment. Right. Remember, it's always set or signed. Set the appointment or sign the agreement. Right. We're either setting the next time we're going to meet or talk, or we're signing the next step of paperwork. That goes throughout the whole process. Right. If I go show them a house tomorrow night, in leaving that house, what are we doing? We're setting the next appointment or we're signing an offer to purchase. Now, oftentimes I get, well, they don't want to offer on that house and we don't know what house they're going to go look at next. That's okay. Set the appointment anyway. Right. So I show a house tomorrow night. They decide they don't want that house. Okay, great. When would be the next time that would work for you to go see a house? Monday at 5 o'clock? Okay, great. Let's plan to meet Monday at 5 o'clock. If no houses come on the market that qualify for them between now and Monday at 5 o'clock, what are we going to do? Reschedule for another time. Yeah, we're already prepping them to say we're going to find the right house and we're setting the next appointment. So there's no question. It's on your calendar. You can now control your time block. We're setting boundaries and we're helping forward pace them to the next step in the process. Buyers want to know what's next. So do sellers, right? They want to know what's the next step in the process. When am I going to hear from you? When am I going to meet with you? What are we going to do next?
Given inventory, given whatever.
Sure. And yet we're setting a time and we adjust, right? Better to have something set and adjust than have nothing set and then we're totally flying by the seat of our pants. Right. Right. And that agent doesn't ask if they have an agency agreement. Right. And they go show them a house and they write an offer. And then we're dealing with the real estate commission and a complaint and you might never get paid. Thoughts, ahas, comments, questions? Was this helpful? Someone take away at least one nugget out of the room today?
Thing to come on the market, you can check it down, but setting that appointment, it gives you that mental thing to, even if there isn't anything coming on the market, you know, you check it into that.
Does it also provide you with accountability to be looking for something? Because how many of us get lost in the, oh, well, whenever they find the right house or whenever I happen to see it, right? Yet it's causing us to say, oh, I have an appointment with them. I need to be actively lead generating for the house that they're going to buy. Jeff.
Oh, that was it. I was just gonna ask if anyone had done the ABR certification that's here.
Oh, the Realtor Association, the
Class.
accredited buyer rep.
You did?
I did years ago.
And then, so, yeah, and you've done the two, well, have you done the two continuing ed things to get the credit for it, or did you just do the class?
I did the class, but I got certification, I got my little pin, I got everything, so I was doing what I was supposed to.
I thought you had to take two other classes after that. No?
Well, I already had some already in the pipeline that I've already taken, so I think the accredited towards it. Because you had to take, yeah, there's 3 classes, but I've already taken.
Be a cool thing if we could do that here, the ABR certification or like. a class.
So they offer it for free now across the Realtor Association. I think they do it online and in person.
That was the last webinar.
Yeah, but they're offering it nationally now for free. It's one of the things I think the Realtor Association is trying to stay alive. And, and so they're offering a lot of things free they used to charge for.
You like it?
All right. Any other thoughts, comments, ahas?
One of the bylaws said going through discussion that shows your value before discussing compensation is great for discussion.
Love that.
Oh, and that, thank you for bringing that up. One of the things that Karen wanted to make sure that we had in ours was our value proposition. So make sure that that's in your,
Yep. And by walking them through all of this and giving them a guide is that value proposition. Yeah, you're showing them what you're going to do, how you're going to work for them. Right? What's the process look like? You notice we didn't talk about specific process today because is that unique to each one of you? Yeah. Overall, the model is the same. Each of you are going to have a different set of questions you ask because your process is different. Anything else? If not, I'm going to give you some time back in your day.
thank you.
Absolutely.
These are helpful.
What do y'all want to talk about next? Okay. Okay. We can definitely put that on the calendar. Any other topics? Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Still have not gone through this. The whole process about our compensation, given what's being offered and it's not being disclosed yet.
Jason's doing a 1 hour every week the month of August, so be on the lookout for that too. So,
And it's really beneficial to go to it. I've done one and it's still like.
Sure. Yep.
So you're offering, I was gonna have to offer 3, now I need to go back and everything that.
Yeah, I talked to Jason on that one. Yep. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate you being here. I'm gonna give you 20 minutes back in your rainy Thursday. It's not Tuesday, it's Thursday. Let me know if there's anything I can do to support you in your business. Appreciate you all.
Anybody